Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing part 3 of the illustration process using Photoshop. If you're interested in part 1 and 2, just search in the video archive and you'll see both the videos showing the process from sketch to color flats to where we're going to land today, which is putting in the shading and the highlights and wrapping up the illustration. So enjoy the process. All right, guys, so here's what we're dealing with today. Of course, in Photoshop, this is the program that I used in the previous 2 videos to sketch out the piece, then went in, actually, I inked it because I believe, I'm trying to get my ducks in a row here. So let's do this. Actually, let's do this. We'll go group, hide. Okay, so this is where we were to begin with. I did this traditionally, and I thought, how fun would it be to show you the process of going from this all the way over to this. And you see I've preserved the sketch quality because I've utilized a specific type of brush to do this. So let's hit ungroup. Excuse me. I'm trying to figure out the quick key to ungroup because I typically do it. Layer. Ungroup layers. Good grief, man. Usually it's a quick key, and I've been doing it for so long, it's usually just like, and I do a quick key, and I don't even think about it. But whenever you have to actually sit down and think about it, man, how embarrassing. Okay, so let's get back to what I was talking about. Okay. My apologies again for the allergies. I took allergy medication this morning. I've got some issues, so bear with me. If I make an occasional snorter or whatever, please don't judge me too harshly. Okay, so I'm seeing a couple things that I want to change really quick because it's been a hot minute since I looked at this illustration. Like whenever I zoom in and I see some of the inconsistencies, so I'm going to go ahead and go to black. I'm going to go to my brush. My favorite brush, which is Pastel C, make sure that it works good, which it does. I'm just going to go ahead and shore up some of these small areas here and there. Make sure I'm on the correct layer, which I am. Select, and just, what I'm going to do now. So I went in and I've explained this before, and I think I did in the last video too, layer management. So layer management has to do with the placement of certain elements in the layer hierarchy so it works with you. You don't want your layer management to work against you, and I want to be able to modify things as I go, flatten things, modify. And since I've been in the business for just a little while, I understand the importance of being able to keep your file in layers. Does this happen all the time? No. If I'm doing a piece for myself, typically I won't go in and mess around with a bunch of layers. But in the context of how I'm creating this for you guys, yes, it's important. Okay. And again, that blinking that you're seeing, it doesn't happen when it's in full screen like this. And this is probably where we're going to live most of the time in this illustration as I go in and put in the lights and darks. But because of the way Windows treats Photoshop and conversely Photoshop treats Windows, you're going to see an occasional anomaly because of these tabs or frames are open. And it happened, there it was again. And it happens on pretty much every PC that I've owned. And I've owned some really powerful ones, so I know it's not something I'm doing exclusively. Okay, so let's go back. And if you've watched my other videos, you know about how I've placed things. So if you look, and I'm doing this just as a really quick refresher, I originally went in and just blocked everything in gray. Then I went back and I just started going from the back forward, just similar to what I did in painting. So I put in the background first. Here's my sketch. That's on the very top and it's on a transparent layer. And I went in and I blocked in the gray. And then using layer clipping masks, I went in and started just putting in the items layered on top of each other. Okay. And here he is. And here is his hand. It's forward a little bit. And here is his backpack. And here is the grass. So you see in very quick order, I was able to create nice depth, depth of field, and placement of items. So now whenever I start rendering them, I can literally just go to this layer and I can create a layer mask or a clipping mask on top of that. Or what I'm probably going to end up doing is just locking the transparency. Or if I want, I'll go ahead and just do this. And you see now, if I was on this layer and I created a layer, here, we're going to go back. So let's go ahead and delete this because I think this is important. So if I want to create a layer to have shadow in it right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a layer mask. And you're like, well, layer masks have to do with the layer on the bottom. Actually, since these are all in the hierarchy, they're referencing this gray layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start putting in my simple shadows. I'm going to go with multiply. And it's a warmer, cooler, well, we're going to have warm light coming from the top. We're going to have cool light reflecting from the left-hand side, maybe some cool light from the right-hand side. So I like using a purple hue as my general shadow layer. And I'm going to go ahead in and I'm going to increase this and I'm going to go ahead and put shape dynamics and I'm going to hit pen tilt. And I like this again because it gives me that control. So whenever I turn, you see I turn the pen. Like if I'm going around and I turn and you see the brush turns. Not all devices support tilt. Not all tablets support tilt. This particular device, this XB Pen device, does. And you see, as I go in, I still have that texture, which I want because it again lends itself to my rendering style. I'm going to go ahead in and I'm going to just start placing some simple shadows. Now, I definitely want pressure, and this is the pressure curve or the pressure cue right here, this little dot up here, since I am on the brush. Again, every single time I change my tool, your settings change at the top. So I'm on the brush tool. I've got my brush settings right here. These are the macro settings. Okay, so then I can change the transparency on the brush itself, not the layer. I can also change the opacity. I can change the pressure. I can change how much paint comes out of the brush at one time. I can change the taper. Taper being when you brush something, the tip is the taper. It tapers to a fine point. I can give it symmetry. I can put a smoothing algorithm on it. So whenever I go ahead and I paint, it'll actually smooth that stroke, which I don't like using stroke smoothers because it deadens the feeling of the brush. So what I'm doing right now is I'm going to go ahead in and I'm just going to start putting some shadows in. Okay. And since I've got my clipping mask on, you're noticing it's not going outside the lines. You're like, how are you doing that? How is that possible? It's very easy. It's Photoshop trickery. I just have it on a layer mask. That's all I'm doing. I create that layer mask, that clipping mask, and suddenly I have the ability to keep inside of the lines at all time because I've got this gray reference layer on the bottom. So let's go ahead and get rid of the frames here in all of its glory. And I'm basically putting in what's called an object shadow. I haven't put in what's called a global shadow yet. Okay, so object shadows, global shadows, reflective light. Gosh, there's so many different types of things I can go into concerning drawing, but just know an object shadow has to do with its form. Light will hit it from all different angles. Okay, you'll have reflected light from the ground. You'll have reflective light from this pan. You'll have reflective light from his skin. You'll have reflective light from here. Basically, light travels from one source and then it goes pop, 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 pop. It bounces everywhere. And I'm giving it what's called an object shadow. And since this has multiple facets, some areas are going to be affected a little bit darker than others. And then I'm going to do a global shadow. A global shadow has to do with the light source possibly being upper right-hand side and toward me. So whenever I start rendering, quote unquote, rendering it, which is kind of what I'm doing now, I'll put in global shadows. But right now I'm just putting in some object shadows here and there to help me determine where some of those global shadows are going to be. And as you see, I'm not using black. And you're like, whoa, shadows are black. No, they're not. Shadows are an absence of light. You need to remember that. An absence of light. So you have to kind of think kind of in reverse, especially if you're doing shadows first. A lot of people will do simple highlights on a layer and then they'll put in the shadows. But I've got my simple color and my simple flats, my color flats down, so I can go in and just put in some really, again, simple object shadows. I'm just putting in some of those areas that will be affected as I stop and think of what I'm doing. So folds. Folds are a completely different lesson for you guys. Folds are not hard. You just have to remember that folds, there is a formula, and one of the things you can kind of teach yourself is one day get a sheet, get a piece of paper, and start folding it. Start folding it, start understanding, and try to understand how things fold. That was a terrible answer. Just do it. I'm sorry. Okay. And you notice the purple hue, it doesn't really look purple whenever it starts going on the different colors. Number one, I've got it on multiply. So every single time I go over it again, it's going to multiply that shadow again, 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 and again until it reaches the maximum transparency of what I'm trying to accomplish. And the shadows on him are going to be more contrasty. That's an art term, by the way, contrasty. Than shadows in the background. And shadows that are closest to me will probably be the darkest. And that is by design and also by placement of where I am in 3D space in relation to this drawing. Okay, so back here, the shadows aren't going to be as prevalent because, again, I don't want all of my contrast and all of my shadowing to be the same everywhere. I want to be able to direct your eye, direct your focus to where it needs to go. Because I am the illustrator. I am the one telling the story. I'm the one directing your eye, right? So if I have a contrast over here that is the same up here, then suddenly it equals everything out. And you don't get a distance relationship from stuff in the background to stuff in the foreground. So remember, stuff in the background and stuff in the periphery, that's around, the peripheral, just like vision. You have singular vision and then you have peripheral. Stuff in the periphery is not as important as the subject. Okay. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on time lapse as I start putting in the shadows in these areas, because, you know, watching me sit here and draw for the next 40 minutes, although educational, I would get a lot of people that'd be like, dude, just be quiet. Just be quiet. I had one guy that lit me up. He's like, dude, I can't handle it anymore. You just need to shut up. I'm like, okay. And then you have some people like, I like it when you talk. Okay, so that, what I'm doing right now, I'm getting distracted. So I need to have the shadow on this side. Okay. Yeah, people are finicky. Especially when it comes to this stuff. Okay. And keeping it loose. That's part of the style of this style of illustration. Keeping things loose, keeping things not so tight, not so, not so rigid. And I'm trying to show you guys just this one particular style of illustration that I utilize. I have many styles of illustration that I utilize. This isn't the only, but this is the style that I picked to depict this particular character set, this particular story, right? It looks hand done, which it is. It is digital, but it looks like it's, you know, could be painted or drawn, because I love that texture. I want that texture to come through. That's important to me. That adds to the overall art design of the piece. And not to mention pretty much all the other pieces that I've done have the same textured look to them, so I want to keep that going. And plus I like it. Okay, so let me go ahead and I'll put you guys on time lapse, and you can watch the process of me putting in the shadows in this piece. Okay, so enjoy. Okay, so this is the stage of the illustration where I just am wrapping up some of the object shadows, and I'll be moving into the highlights. So what I want to do is, you see some of these areas don't have as much rendering as I would like. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in, I've selected a darker green hue, and it's going to be a little bit cooler. So cool of the spectrum, light has different temperatures, and red, yellow is in the warm area, and then we have blue light and green and some of those other areas, and those are cooler. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to just give a little indication here and there of a shadow, just a little bit here and there. I'm very conscious of not wanting to put too much into that, because again, the focus is right here, right? So in areas like this, just to give that distance relationship, background, midground, foreground, I'm going to pull some of these darker blades of grass forward. And the way that I've got my layer hierarchy set up, currently, as you see, I'm not breaking that pixel plane, because I've got everything currently on layer masks according to this bottom gray layer, and we talked about that a little bit earlier. So I can just go in and very leisurely put in some of these areas that I think matter. Okay, let's get this right here. Hopefully everybody's having an awesome day. So I put in my texture. I've used this texture brush quite a bit. It is my main sketch brush. It is just a wonderful piece of technology. I've just switched layers over to him, because I want to go back into some of these areas, and I want to go ahead, and I've still got that cool green on, and I'm going to go ahead and define that shadow a little bit better. They never said illustration was fast. I thought it was supposed to be fast. I remember watching all those wonderful how-tos on your Disney Plus. Man, those guys were just, they crank out a movie in like an hour or something. No, it doesn't work like that. It takes many, 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 many years of dedication and understanding of how things work in illustration to be able to do something like this. So don't get discouraged if you're following along and you're trying to emulate this. Don't get discouraged if yours does not look like mine. It just takes practice. That horrible word. Growing up, I hated that word, practice. Go in the other room and practice your voice lesson. I don't want to. Well, you want to get better? You just don't want to get better. And yeah, parent manipulation. Parent manipulation. Oops, I don't want that green. I want it to be in the purple hue. Again, I've got my brush setting on multiply, and I've got it on pressure sensitivity, and I've got my layer transparency locked. So I'm just literally going back and I'm kind of fine tuning some areas. And this isn't even really the final shadow where I really want to be just yet. It's getting there. I jokingly said one time when I was in class teaching, I said, illustration and drawing is one of those things that is a lifelong endeavor, and you're constantly kind of pushing yourself and pushing the envelope as to what you think you're trying to accomplish. Okay, I've got a shadow that comes right here because of his hat. And a lot of times, we feel like we fail miserably. I don't consider any drawing a failure. I consider not trying a failure. I consider giving up a failure. but I guess everybody's definition of failure is different. So let's go ahead, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to focus on him first. So again, the transparency layer is locked. Now I'm going to switch to overlay. Actually, I'm going to do something different here. So normal. Let's add a layer mask. Let's do kind of a generalized highlight. Some generalized highlights. So I've got a little bit of a highlight on his eye, and that's just kind of a placeholder to give him a little bit of life. So let's go ahead and hit Alt, and we're going to click that layer in between, and it's going to create another clipping mask. And I'm going to go ahead and pick a warm hue for this. So I'm going to change the layer transparency, not the brush. So we're on layer transparency now, and I'm going to go to overlay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to sample some colors here. So first, I'm going to sample that green. I'm going to jack that up, and I'm going to warm up that green hue. See what that does? Is it pulls the highlights that are in there, and it pulls them out. I don't know if I think I did. It might have been on another video that I'm developing. I've been watching a lot of the crocodile, Crikey, it's the Irwins. Crikey, it's the Irwins. And it's just a fun program, you know, to watch with your kids. It's family safe, because I do have kids, by the way. It's family safe. It's just fun. It's a fun program. And I'm constantly learning more and more about wildlife. And that's pretty much the purpose of the show. They're trying to get you to learn more about conservation. And the preservation of wildlife and their natural and their captive habitats, you know. Okay, so that, I don't want to do that because that's a different type of green, but I'm going to go ahead and continue on here. Okay. And then I'm going to choose kind of an orange hue. Okay, save. Kind of a yellowish orange hue. And we are global right now, meaning this layer is referencing all of it. So if I accidentally go over the line, see what it does? It'll actually go over the line. So, and I'm gonna go back and do some individual object highlights here in just a minute to show you what I'm talking about. So now we're gonna select that blue. I'm gonna go a little bit lighter and a little bit, I don't wanna go warmer. Yeah, let's go warmer this direction right here. How can blue be warm? Okay, let's go up here. Let's do a little bit of that. Let's go right around. A little test. Because again, there's so much light happening in this piece. You know, you have that yellow light hitting the blue, and of course, yellow and blue make green. I remember one of the rhymes that I used to use when I was growing up. It was because of a stupid commercial for Ziploc bags. I don't know if you guys had that, but yellow and blue make green. Yay! Yay! That looks pretty good. So now I'm going to select the red. We're going to go warm right up here. Warm, nice orange hue. A little bit brighter, a bit yellower. There we go. Just kissing it. I'm just kissing this red. Actually, it's a little bit too much. Yeesh. And I keep zooming out. And there is a way you can have a little, let's go ahead and save window. Where's that at? History, info, library, navigator. Okay, so the navigator is really cool, and you can keep it up in the right-hand corner if you want. That way, whenever you zoom in, you can always look at the full-size rendering. Now, typically what I'll do is I'll have that on a separate a separate screen, but in lieu of that, I just zoom in and out because the real estate on this particular tablet is at a premium. You know, with the 22, you do have some leeway with the real estate meaning the area, but I want to focus, you know, for presentation purposes to make sure that you guys can see everything that I'm doing. So I'm doing it for the children. It's all for the children, I promise you. And these highlights I would probably equate to, I don't know, let's go a little bit greener, a little bit warmer. There we go. These are just kind of global highlights. I'm going to go in here in just a minute. Global meaning, again, you know, broad spectrum. I don't have anything locked in. And I'm just going in and putting in some of these lovelies, you know. Okay. I had a lovely project today that I had to accomplish, and trust me, I had to have patience. So a lot of you guys know that I work in the toy industry, and I design toys. I do toys for the theme parks, Harry Potter, you know, Disney, Star Wars. I mean, I do a lot of toys. I just don't show anything on here because that's not really what this channel is about. I'm not here to show off. You know, that being said, I want to make sure you guys know that you know, being in this industry is challenging. And, you know, just like any industry, you always have different ways of doing things. And, you know, I've said that 100 times on here. There's a lot of ways to do the same thing in Photoshop and Illustrator. So I completed this package design for one of the properties in one of the theme parks. Of course, I'm being cryptic because I can't really talk about it. Sorry about that. And, you know, I created everything in Photoshop because that's where the root art exists. If you guys don't know anything about how, you know, theme parks and big businesses work, you have an internal art department that creates a lot of the quote unquote assets. Assets being character art. Where's my cursor? Oh, there it is. That vendors use, vendor being an outside source, an outside company that goes and manufactures. It's because you want the company that owns the properties to be able to basically have complete control over all aspects of the way their design stuff looks like. That's why you don't see a lot of outside artwork. Hold on, we need to go back to global. Okay. And that being said, where are we on? We need to go lighter. That being said, so I downloaded the assets, and of course they're in raster Photoshop format, and you know, at 300 to 400 DPI, the industry standard for print medium, like a magazine or something like that, is typically 300 DPI. You can go higher, 400, 600 DPI, but the kind of the standard for that is going to be 300 DPI. Where does my cursor keep going? What is this? Huh. So I created a very large, you know, file for a package, and I sent it over to be produced. And lo and behold, you know, it comes back and it's like it's blurry. And I'm like, what? A 400 DPI to size art, you know, that's not going to be blurry. So I was kind of confused, but, you know, no big deal. So I went in and I adjusted a few things that I thought maybe could be blurry. And I sent it back again, and lo and behold, it came back again. And it's like, it's blurry, it's blurry. And, you know, one of the things that I always have to realize is, you know, I have to stop for a second and realize that a lot of places, especially when you're sending stuff overseas, doesn't have the same equipment that you do, don't have the same understanding of the way files work that you do. And you would hope they do, but, you know, a lot of them don't. So I had to kind of swallow, quote unquote, my pride, which is always something I recommend. And I had to think, okay, if they keep getting a blurry issue, then I need to realize, hey, maybe I need to switch over to an alternative, way of doing things. So I had to convert the entire raster art file that I did. Oops, let's do this. Go back. That I did to vector. And, of course, the background stayed the same because it's a gigantic TIFF and I don't have the capability to create vectors from that. But I had to do all the text. I had to do all the periphery art. I had to do all of that. And I'm like, ugh. So it just gives you some understanding that sometimes things just don't go your way of how you normally do them, and you just have to roll the punches. That's what I was trying to say, that long-winded speech. Nice warm highlight up here. He's starting to have some good character to him, isn't he? So right now what I'm going to do, just because I want to, before I put you guys on time lapse for the remainder of the light rendering here, I'm going to choose that. Okay, so now we're going to switch brushes. I'm going to go to this brush right here. It's real soft. Okay. Go pressure, yes. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to continue on putting in the highlights. You kind of understand the gist of it. So my global highlights right here that I have, oh, that's my sketch. Global highlights that I have right here, you see. And I'll come back and I'll do, like if I come back and I grab this brush again, and I select this, and I warm that up. Here, again, we're still on that overlay layer. Still haven't really gone in and done the final quote-unquote highlights for this. Maybe I'll brighten it up just a little bit. And see, that's cool. So you can go ahead and you can do a little bit more. Give it a little bit of sheen to it. Sheen and shine. Say that 10 times. Sheen and shine, sheen and shine, sheen and shine, sheen and shine, sheen and shine. Wasn't as hard as I thought. Okay. Okay. So then we'll come over here to this rock. We'll select that. And then I want it to be a little bit warmer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Again, this is a global, so I can actually go over everything, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to go ahead here. I'm looking for those flat surfaces. This, it goes flat, and then it goes down, and then it goes flat again, and then it's, you can see over here, you've got some flat areas. Whoops. Okay. So now I'm going to put you guys on the time lapse and let you watch the remainder of the rendering process. And I'll bring you guys back in for a final wrap up when I start doing some global, maybe reflective light. Maybe we'll have something coming from this side, maybe from this side, and we'll play a little bit near the end. So enjoy. Okay, so I'm in the final legs of the illustration, and I just wanted to kind of bring you in on the tail end here as I wrap things up. Right now I've got a layer on top of everything. You see, I didn't get too out of control with my layers. I tried to preserve the texture as best I could, but this last layer is kind of like an overshadow. It's not really the last layer. I've still got a little bit of highlights to do in the grass, but I'm going to use a brush for that, and I'll show you that in just a second. I don't typically use brushes for, I don't know, you have your grass brushes, you have tree brushes, you have all of those things. And I do utilize those items occasionally, but just because I want to make sure and kind of have complete control, I don't know, that's not really an excuse. I just like drawing. There you go. There's my excuse. I like drawing everything most of the time. Brushes are great whenever you have to do things in a pinch or you have large areas. But overall, I kind of like to have, that sense of accomplishment, and also, I just like to draw. And brushes are a great tool, and I use brushes a lot, but using and relying upon brushes to solve a lot of the things that, you would normally do, such as, rendering grass or, putting trees in. I think overall it's a good thing when you use brushes, but just remember that it's just a tool. Brushes are just a tool. That's what I'm just trying to say. Okay, so what I'm doing now, like I said, is I'm going in and I'm putting in some of these darker shadows to kind of give it some contrast. And I've got it on multiply, and I'm using a purple hue. Again, to kind of, push and pull some of those items here and there. It's a little bit too dark. Okay. Hopefully you guys are getting something from this process. I spent a little bit longer on this one just so you guys can understand. It does take a long time to do this. Like I'd said earlier on in the video, I can remember watching some of those how-to, how they made it. How did they do it? How did they make the Lion King? How did they do this? Lion King, I think took 4 or 5 years to make. This stuff takes time. Rendering takes time. Illustration takes time. And there is no easy fix. I like the speed painters because they teach me a lot about painting. And I love watching speed paint. And those people are really good at doing things in a quick manner. They can read stuff really quick. But me, sometimes I just like to take my time. Okay, so now, oops, I don't like that. Okay, so that foot's a little bright. Let's go ahead and push him back a little bit. Okay. All right, so I'm going to go down to the grass really quick. Grass. Where is it at? Right there. Let's make sure. Yes. Okay, so we have the transparency locked. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that we're off. We're going to do kind of a brighter greenish yellow hue. Right around there. Then I'm going to come to the brushes, and I'm going to find me a good grass brush. Where are my foliage brushes? General foliage. Fur. Why is fur sampled? Yeah, I like that one. Here we go. And you see, you can really put down a lot of grass in a very short amount of time using some of these brushes. There we go. There we go. Gives a little bit of highlight here and there. I'm not going crazy. I'm not going crazy with it. Let's see this one. Let's go up. Trees. Okay. Green leaves. Let's see what that looks like. Oh, I do like that. Let's get some leaves on the ground here. Just here and there. A little spot, little texture, gives a little bit of texture. You know, maybe I'll change the color. This time it's a little bit lighter. Some grass and stuff there. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the very top. And I'm going to change the color of that brush. And I'm going to increase the size. And I'm going to have a little bit of a kind of a wispy moment here. Maybe something blowing through. And I'm going to go in and I'm going to use my blur. I'm going to blur things. Because I think I am. There we go. Yeah, let's go to filter, blur, blur, Gaussian blur. That's a little bit too much. Okay. Blur, good. Looks pretty good. We're going to give it a little bit of filter. Now we're going to go to motion blur. Distance a little bit more, just slightly. Okay. Again, that just gives it just a little hint. Here, let's go back. I changed a couple settings on my Photoshop, and I think I'm regretting it. Okay, so let's go back down to 128. Let's go to basic. Okay. Advanced, and I'm going to turn off OpenCL because I have a feeling it's causing some issues here. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so let's darken these up a little bit, make them a little bit brown hue. Let's do a couple in the background over that. Kind of show them that they're blowing in the wind. Right. Again, a little bit of texture. And, you know, I keep touting the prowess of these modern tablets. You know, XP Pen being one of the big manufacturers. And of course, I'm working on the XP Pen 22 HD 2nd Gen. That's its title. 1080p, 8,000 levels of pressure sensitivity, extremely powerful tool, beautiful colors as you see, and just a wonderful tool for you guys to utilize. And there's other manufacturers, of course, but you know, this just happens to be the XP Pen model. And, you know, everybody asked me, what's the best size for, you know, the tablets? And I said, well, it's the biggest one you can afford. I like having a lot of real estate because I can put different, you know, the windows here, here, and have a nice illustration environment. But, you know, I've drawn on small tablets. I've drawn on desktop tablets. And, you know, there's different manufacturers out there that do that. And XP Pen has a great variety, and so does Wacom, and so does, you know, Huion. But for my money, you know, this is a great bang for the buck. I told you guys before, I don't support anything unless I believe in it. And I've owned numerous tablets over the years, and for the bang for the buck, you know, I think this particular tablet is fantastic. You know, it's one of the more budget-minded tablets, but on the other hand, it doesn't skimp on pretty much anything. And I definitely think if you're looking for something that you can use for digital illustration, digital art, graphic design, animation. This particular tablet, that XP Pen 22 HD 2nd Gen, will definitely help you out in the long run. And it's really budget minded. I think there's like $4.99, and then they have 15 and 20% off coupons. You could possibly get this thing for under $400. I mean, that's golly. I mean, I remember I paid $1,000 for a used 22-inch HD Wacom tablet 4 years ago, 3.5, 4 years ago. So that kind of gives you an understanding of how much stuff costs, you know. So let's do color dodge. Let's give it a little bit of blue. Let's start out with blue on this side. Okay, so let's do, I don't want to do leaves. Let's do, you know, okay. Actually, let's do color. And this is going to be kind of a global, meaning it's going to treat every layer underneath it the same. It's going to try and change the color. So if I went really hot and heavy, it's going to change every tone, or I'm sorry, every hue underneath blue. And I don't want that. So I'm just trying to cool this off a little bit. It's a little warm, right? And I'll put some little cool reflected light here and there. And again, this gives it that variety that I'm looking for, that variety. Yeah, I'll put a little bit under here to cool things off. Yeah, maybe he's got a little bit of a, see how that changes that hue? It cools it off. Let's go over here because this is really warm. Let's cool this shadow off right here. Let's cool some of these shadows off. Some of that reflected light from the grass is going to come up. You know, it's going to hit the underbelly of some of these leaves. There we go. You can really see the difference there. And this is, again, not trial by error, but this is knowledge that you can utilize as you move forward. I mean, just go outside and look around. Look around at some of the stuff that you're surrounded by. You know, a really good example would be if you took a white sheet and you walked outside in the grass and it's sunny and it's coming from overhead, you take a white sheet and you stretch it out and you just place it perpendicular with the grass. You can see the reflected light from the grass. Okay, good. Okay, and then I'm going to sample. I thought I was going to sample. Oh, I think what's happening, there it is. Oops, let's go here. Let's hit save for a second. I think something's going on with my... Okay, I accidentally hit the eraser. I'm like, what's going on? I don't understand what's going on. Everything's messed up. Okay, select that red hue. Let's go ahead and warm that up slightly. And we're going to warm some of these areas up. Even on the green, we can warm some of these up, right? A little bit more blood flow around his eyes. You know, a little bit more. Maybe he's been munching on some beavers. I'm just kidding. Whenever you're finishing an illustration up, I think the propensity is to be in a hurry so you can be done and move on to the next one. But a lot of times what I'll do is I will stop and I will come back. I will come back to the piece of art because it's just one of those deals where you do something and, you know, once you're done, you think you're completely done. But then a good thing to do is to just walk away and then to come back maybe 30 minutes later. And I've already done that with this piece. Yeah, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to warm this up a little bit. Okay. I watched a show last night. that really blew my mind. It was King Kong versus Godzilla. What a ride. Watched it on HBO Plus, HBO Max. That's what it is, HBO Max. And it was great. Just action-packed. I think some of the... I mean, the storyline really sucked, but overall it was good, you know. And I had fun. And that's what, you know, I always tell people. Don't expect it to be a life-changing movie. Just go in with that attitude. You're going to have fun today with the movie, and that's it. I used to work at a movie theater, so I'd always have people that would want to ask me, what'd you think of this movie? What'd you think of that movie? And typically my reaction was, unless it was really bad, I was like, oh, that's pretty good. Because I'm there to be entertained. I'm not there to change the world there, buddy. You know, I want to be entertained. All right, I think that's where we're going to land with this one. This is, of course, beans. Eating a can of beans. Ha! Stop it. Beans eating a can of beans. And, yeah, that's nice and warm. Look at him. Ooh, beautiful. Nice color hue. That's, you know, like I said before, I can work on this illustration for hours, but that being said, this is not a review of this piece. This is just to show, or not a review of this tablet. I already did that. But as a tool, it's fantastic. Use it, abuse it, see how long she lasts. But this process for these 3 videos was supposed to show you my illustration process in Photoshop. And this is just one way of doing things, you know? Sketching, you can sketch things out digitally. You can color things digitally. You can do things traditionally, scan it in, go digital. I mean, there's so many different ways that the artists can really have a lot of fun in today's digital world. You know, just remember, the digital illustration tool is just a tool. It will not solve bad drawing habits. The only way you do that is to learn and to practice and to do it all the time. So, all right, you guys, thank you so much for visiting the channel. Like and subscribe if you like what you see. And as always, go out and draw something, have some fun. And please, please, please hit that notification bell. It will definitely help in the growth of the channel. Yeah, we're going to warm this part up. Yeah, that's nice. Nice and warm. It'll definitely help grow the channel. And, you know, as we grow the channel, we'll review more products. We'll start having partnerships. But I'll always stay true to the core, which is to show you guys and teach you guys the fundamentals of illustration and art and the joy of drawing. In not only traditionally, but also digitally. So, again, thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. And Bean says, go out and have yourself some delicious beans. I love them. I like myself an occasional beaver as well. Maybe some fish, maybe some frogs. Either way, I love it. Thank you guys. See you next time.